Stephen Fletcher is the Minister of Democratic Reform and the Member of Parliament for Charleswood St. James, Assiniboia.
Yes.
Thanks for taking the time to have a chat today.
My pleasure, Stephen.
Okay, so first question, what's going on?
Well, there's lots going on. There's a world economic crisis, there's terrorist attacks in India, and the opposition seems to have lost its marbles.
Okay, well, what we're seeing is a bit of a parliamentary crisis here. We could see the opposition table a motion of non-confidence on Monday. So Ways and Means motion, of course, comes right after the Minister of Finance introduces his economic statement. Is the opposition in an uproar over the economy, the plan on the economy, or is it more of something else?
Well, what we are seeing here is the opposition has forgotten about all the serious problems that do exist and that this government is dealing with, and they're focusing on $30 million of taxpayer money that goes to political parties each year, the bulk of which goes to the party with the most votes from the last election, which is the Conservative Party. Now we're saying let's get rid of this welfare for political parties, and in particular in these tough economic times, and let the parties stand on their own 2 feet. Raise money on their own to run their finances. Do not. It should. In a time like this, the opposition parties and the governing party should not be using taxpayers' money to fund their operations. I think we should lead by example.
Now, of course, this $1.95 campaign welfare measure, this to reform this would be, of course, in your file as Minister of Democratic Reform. That's why I came to talk to you today. Have many other members of the media come to interview about this topic?
Well, I have talked to members of the media, but the national media seems to be fixated on other things.
The cut and thrust of the day, I suppose, right?
Yeah, as opposed to
the policy of the issue.
The policy, or the real reason of what is happening here, and that is other political parties are not willing to make the same sacrifices as the Conservatives. In fact, they have to make less of a sacrifice because the Conservatives would lose the most out of this because we got the most votes in the last election. So they're very disingenuous about what is actually happening here. I think the national media needs to see what is the truth here, is that there has been too much reliance on all political parties, including the governing party, on the taxpayer to fund their own operations. And even the NDP government in Manitoba, who were prepared to introduce legislation that would also subsidize parties on a per vote basis, just yesterday withdrew that legislation because they also agree that in these tough economic times, it's not time to increase taxpayer subsidy to political parties.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time to buckle down and focus on what is important. And what is happening here in Ottawa, that the opposition parties seem to be willing to plunge the country into an election or some constitutional quagmire because their checks from the taxpayers will be reduced, and it seems so unnecessary.
Mm. So we were discussing this before. You were saying that it was just local media that's really asked you about this policy topic.
Yeah. Well, I think because the economic statement is driven by the finance minister, but I think again it just goes to the point that missing the true story here, and that is that political parties in Canada, all of them, including the Conservative Party, have become reliant on taxpayer dollars to operate, and we want to reduce that. And the other parties aren't willing to accept what is in the best interest of Canadians, because it goes against they think, the interests of the political parties. But in the long term, it actually will help the democratic process, because it will force parties to deal with the grassroots and connect with the grassroots of Canada, regardless of their political stripe. I saw this in Manitoba when I was president of the PC Party in Manitoba. The government of the day, the NDP, cut off donations from unions and corporations, and without the subsidy, and it was a long time before the Conservative Party of Manitoba was able to create the fundraising network that was necessary. But the party is now stronger for that. So the same could be said for the Liberals and the NDP and Green and Bloc. You know, if they are willing to do the work, it will be better for them.
Now, you mentioned the Premier of Manitoba, Gary Dewar, NDP Premier, actually following in line with much of this policy that's been proposed here in Ottawa for the federal parties. I would have thought that the NDP, having such a stronger fundraising apparatus than the Liberal Party, and perhaps actually being a party that stands on principle, along with the Conservatives, perhaps on different principles, of course, but one that stands on principle nonetheless, I thought they would have supported such a reform to party financing.
Well, perhaps the NDP aren't as principled as you assume.
Ah, well, okay. Let me ask, why now? Why is this policy being introduced amidst the other economic conditions?
Well, just for the very reason of the economic conditions. We think that people in leadership roles should lead by example. We've capped and reduced salaries and other things that MPs currently have. We have asked the public service to cap their salaries. We are asking, we're doing strategic reviews of all the government departments. We're asking people to tighten their belt straps. So why shouldn't the political parties lead by example? And apparently, according to all the opposition parties, Liberals and NDP and Bloc, they don't want to lead by example. They want do as we say, not as we do. And you know, it's just it's really too bad. And especially given these economic times, I think it's a time that we can work together. I've done a lot to try and reach out to people of other political beliefs to ensure that they have input in what our democracy will look like in the future. And all we see is partisan pushback, and that's too bad, because this is a serious time, and this is a time where we need to work together. And we see people from all different political backgrounds in Canada. You know, we see the NDP provincially, we see Conservatives federally. We're all on the same page. The only people that do not support what we're doing are the political parties, the national political parties that are the opposition, Liberals, NDP, and Bloc. And it's wrong. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Okay, well, Stephen Fletcher, I'd just like to thank you for doing this interview today, and wish you, well, a relaxing and productive weekend at the same time.
Won't be relaxing, but I will take the spirit of your comments. Thank you, Stephen.
Great, thanks.